To create a new project in Ruddr, first click on the Project's main navbar option. This will bring you to the Projects List screen. From this screen, just click the Create a Project button at the top right to bring up the New Project window. From this window, the first thing you'll do is type in the name of your new project. Then, you'll either create a new client from this screen, or you can select an existing client. Next, you'll select a billing type for this project. The first option is Time and Materials. With the Time and Materials project, you're essentially billing time to the client at one or more hourly rates. Ruddr allows you to either assign hourly rates to the project team members directly, or you can assign hourly rates to defined project roles. The second billing type is called Fixed Fee. With a fixed fee project, the project has a single fixed fee that you may invoice to the client via a series of billing milestones on the project. A fixed monthly project is similar to a fixed fee project, except the billing schedule will have the same dollar amount per month. And a non-billable project is one where there are no fees at all generated. This would mean it's either an internal project or it's a project for a client where there will be no fees charged. For this example, we'll just choose a time and materials project. The final two settings on this screen are whether or not the project will use roles and whether or not the project will have a budget. We'll talk about these more in a few minutes, and for now we'll leave these two off. With all of this information filled in, we'll just click the Save button to create our new project, and then the Edit Project drawer is shown. At the top of the Edit Project drawer is the client that we selected on the New Project window. Note that we can change this client all the way up until the point in time where we create an invoice for this project. Next, we have the project name. Then we have an optional field, which is the project's practice. Each workspace can define their own set of practices if practices are used. If your organization doesn't use practices, you can leave this field blank. Next, we select the project status. Since this project has just gotten started, we'll choose In Progress. The next field that we can select is called the project type. Each workspace can define its own set of project types, and the reports in Ruddr can be filtered by project type. For this project, we'll choose Strategy Consulting as our project type. Next, we pick the project's start date and end date. Then we can optionally set a project code for the project. In this case, we can see that the project code was generated automatically when we created the project. This is an option that can be set up in the workspace settings, and you can define your own format for the project code. Next, you can select one or more project tags. Each workspace can define its own set of project tags, and then reports can later be filtered by those tags. And the last field in this basic information section is just the notes about this project. You can type in as much information as you like into this notes field. The next section of this overview tab of the Edit Project drawer is the project settings. This section allows us to control whether or not the project uses roles. We can turn on an overall budget or a monthly budget. And also, we can lock the time and expenses on this project. When we manually lock the time and expenses on a project, that will keep project team members from recording new time or expenses or from updating existing time or expenses. We'll come back and look at project roles and project budgeting in just a minute. In this next section, we have some time tracking rules that can be enabled for the project. We can require that every time entry has notes. We can require that every time entry is associated with the project task. We can ensure that time isn't tracked on a weekend or on a holiday. Also, we can control the maximum number of hours that a project team member can track to the project per week or per day. The next section in this Overview tab is called Approval Options. This allows us to control how time and expense are routed for approval in Ruddr. Time entries and expense items can either be automatically approved or manually approved. If they're automatically approved, they'll be approved immediately upon submission by the project team member. If they're set for manual approval, the approval process will depend on whether or not the multi-step approval workflow feature is enabled in the workspace. If that feature is not enabled, then the time and expenses will be approved by the project admin upon submission. If the multi-step workflow feature is enabled, you can click the Edit Workflow buttons shown here on the right side of the screen to define a custom approval workflow for both time and expenses. This checkbox here at the bottom of this section allows you to enable client approvals. When client approvals are enabled, the project admin is able to batch up a report of all time and expenses on the project for a period of time and email that to the client for approval. In this billing section, we choose the billing type, which we looked at earlier, and also we can supply the PO number if there is a PO number that's been given to us by the client. Next, we've got some invoice details. If we leave this Use Client Invoice Details checkbox checked, that means that this project will use all of the invoice information that's been defined at the client level. If we needed to override that information for this particular project, we could uncheck this Use Client Invoice Details checkbox, and then we could type in whatever information we wanted. That's all of the main information on this Overview tab that we'll look at in this training video. The next thing we'll do is add some project team members to this project. We do that from the Team tab. To add a project team member, we just click the Add Member button and then select that team member. We can add as many team members as we like to this project team. Since this project is not configured to use roles, we can see that we've got a bill rate field right here on the Team tab. This allows us to associate a bill rate with each individual team member on the project. If the project was set up to use roles, then we wouldn't apply the bill rates here. We'll take a look at that scenario in just a couple of minutes. Now that we've got bill rates on the project team members, we could go ahead and create a project budget. To do that, we just turn on this Track Overall Budget setting, and then we'll have a Budget tab available on the Edit Project drawer. The default budget in Ruddr is called the Summary Budget. With the Summary Budget, we just type in a single amount for the services revenue budget for the project. Similarly, we can type in an amount for the total billable and non-billable hours, the total billable and non-billable expenses, and any other items to bill. Other items to bill in Ruddr could include things like products or licenses that your company sells. Another popular budgeting option is the detailed budget. With the detailed budget, we can type in the number of billable and non-billable hours per project team member. This will build our budget for us as we type in the hours. In this case, we can see that we've got 320 billable hours budgeted for this project, 10 non-billable hours budgeted, and a total revenue figure of $43,750. We can also see that our blended or effective bill rate here is $132.58. We can budget for expenses by clicking this Quick Add button, and then we can type in the amount of money that we need to budget, either billable or non-billable, per expense category. We can repeat this process to build our entire expense budget for the project. And similarly, we can add all of the other items to bill to create our other items to bill budget. This last budgeting option is a detailed budget aggregated from the project's tasks. We won't show this option here, but if you build out an inventory of tasks on the project and choose this option, the budget will automatically be created from the budgets on each individual task. One tab that we haven't talked about yet on the Edit Project drawer is the Accounting tab. The Accounting tab will always have at least these two sections on it, which are the Other Items to Bill ledger and the Expenses ledger. As mentioned earlier, other items to bill include things like products or licenses that you sell your clients. For example, let's assume that we're going to sell 100 licenses of our product to this client. We would go in and type in a quantity of 100. In this case, we'll say that the price is $50 per license, and that automatically calculates a total amount of $5,000. We just click this Add button, and now we can see that we've got an other item to bill in our ledger. We can create as many of these other items to bill as we like, and these items will automatically show up on the Ready to Bill screen in Ruddr when it's time for them to be put on an invoice. Similarly, we can keep track of an expenses ledger for this project. The expenses ledger is typically used for larger expenses that are paid for by your company. While an employee's airfare expense or hotel expense would go on that employee's expense report, the expenses ledger will include the expenses that typically come into the accounts payable team within your company. For example, let's assume that we outsourced a portion of this project to a third party. And let's assume we want to bill that back to our client. We would go ahead and fill in the name of the vendor, the amount that we were charged, and then any notes here, and we click the Add button to add that project expense to the expenses ledger. Note that we can add both billable and non-billable expenses to this ledger. The billable expenses will automatically be picked up on the Ready to Bill screen when it comes time to invoice for those expenses. Now, the last thing that we're going to show in this training video on creating a project in Ruddr is how to create a project that uses roles. When we click this Use Roles checkbox in the Settings section of the Overview tab, you'll notice that we now have a Roles tab at the top of this screen. Also, you'll notice that the Team tab no longer shows bill rates for each team member. That's because the bill rates are going to be set up on project roles. Sometimes customers ask us when they should use roles and when they should just associate bill rates directly to team members. Using project roles has several advantages. For example, let's say that you want one of your team members to bill on a project at different bill rates. The best way to do that is to create the project roles and assign the different bill rates to those roles, and then assign the appropriate project team member to the roles. Another scenario that can come up is when you need a project team member to bill to the project for certain types of work, but then have non-billable time for other types of work. For that scenario, you can create billable roles and non-billable roles, and a project team member can be assigned to both types of roles. For our example here, we'll go ahead and create a couple of project roles. We'll create a billable project manager role at $150 an hour. Then we'll create a billable senior consultant role at $140 an hour. Then we'll create a non-billable account executive role. We can see that a role is non-billable by this gray circle with a dollar symbol in it compared to the green circle which identifies a billable role. Now that we have our 3 roles on this project, we just need to assign our project team members to the roles. We can do that with this role assignments ledger here at the bottom. Let's assume that Gordon is our project manager, Cameron is our senior consultant, and that Rob is the backup project manager, but also the account executive. So as you can see, Rob's been assigned to 2 different roles. One of them is billable and one of them is non-billable. Now there are some minor settings that we didn't get into in this training video, but we've covered all of the major use cases. Now that we've got our project fully configured, we can just click this Save and Close button at the bottom, and we're ready for our team to start tracking time to the project.